What's going on, everybody? Welcome to beautiful November, where it's 70 degrees for whatever reason. What we have here today is a Honda Foreman 4x4 450. This is a 1998 machine, and what I'm going to go over really quick is how to look for a machine to buy that you're going to want to repair, that you're going to get for less than you would have if you were going to buy a one that was in working condition right away. I'm also going to go over, kind of like in the Recon video, about what to look out for when purchasing a low-cost ATV that does not run. And I'm going to go over the very basics of it to start, and then in other videos, or if you look in my other videos in the past, you can see how to diagnose these in more, let's call it, more aggressively diagnose these with more probability of success. But right now, we're going to look at the basics as if you're a normal person that doesn't have all the mechanical tools to diagnose, and you want to get into a cheap ATV to repair and then ride in the future. So this is a really good condition looking on the outside Honda Foreman S. And now this is important. It's not an ES, and I look for certain things in ATVs so that I don't have future problems with them moving forward. So I, if you didn't notice already, am a connoisseur of Honda or Japanese vehicles more than anything. I prefer classic ATVs, as is evidenced by this channel in the past, and I prefer Hondas more than anything because I've had the best luck with them. But I do currently own about a 50-50 split between Japanese vehicles and like Can-Am or BRP or something like that. I can tell you for certain, ATV-wise, I'm always going to lean toward the big four, and those big four are Yamaha, Honda, Suzuki, Kawasaki. So those are the ones I look forward to primarily. For ATVs, I lean toward Honda because I know them the most. So when I see something like this pop up with a title, decent plastics, and I notice that there's some issues or it doesn't run or start, and somebody's selling it, let's say for $1,000 or less, you've got my attention right away because I know that I have a good chance of being able to figure this out pretty cheap. So when I met with this guy, he stated that there was no, obviously, way to start this. And, and he couldn't figure it out. Now, right away, I noticed when I pulled this seat up that there was no battery. And I've already taken this apart, so let's move this out. There's no battery, so obviously it's not going to start. Another thing I noticed is wires are cut or they're stripped. And another thing I noticed is there are bite marks on some of these wires. So right away, when you're looking at an ATV, you can look at things like this and go, oh, either I'm not used to doing it or I don't feel like putting in the time to figure this out, because the wiring issues are one of the largest issues with ATVs. Let's say you're going to get into the ATV repairs in the future. This is a good start as it was, and I'll explain why. Because, first of all, if we look at the motor, there's no cracks, there's no steep seepages, there's no damage to the motor itself. It looks like it's in pretty good shape. Now, the way you do that is you run a full inspection around it. See if there's any seepages. Sorry, it's in November, so we have a lot of down leaves. But so right here, you notice there's no oil underneath the ATV anywhere. So that's a good sign that says the case is probably in pretty good shape and it doesn't leak. The second thing you're going to want to look at right away is right here. If you do have a pull start, so all Honda Foremans or all Honda Recons have a pull start backup. So what you're going to do is you're going to put this into neutral, which I don't think this is in right now, and then you're going to give it a light pull and see right here where TDC or top dead center. We're going to see if it resists us pretty hard. We're going to pull back and we're going to pull hard. And there it is again, resists us. Now, what that tells me is there's good compression. It doesn't tell me the exact compression of this machine, but it tells me that there's enough compression for this to run. And what you're going to look forward to on a 4-stroke is probably anywhere 120 and up beyond. Now I can tell just by pulling it how much resistance that gives me, which gives me an idea that the PSI is probably up over 100. So without a compression tester, you can't tell exactly what that compression is, but you can tell that it might be good enough to drive and run with its necessary repairs. So compression, very important. Spark, very important. And again, wiring creates a spark, and a stator creates a spark, and there's more to it. Then your other going to check for is oil. So here's another one. We're going to pull this out and see what kind of oil this has in here. So right now you see it. You can see the verbiage on the oil dipstick. And if you pull this out, you can see that we're in dark amber, which is an amazing sign. That's probably the best sign you're going to want to see out of oil. It shows that the previous owner may have changed it in a while, but what it does show you is that it was used for quite some time. There's no water mixture in here, and there's no damage in here, any metal specks, which is probably the worst thing you can see. Now, water is bad because in this case it could have been dunked, and that's what the last ATV, the Recon, had water in the oil. Who cares? Because people were dunking it in water. And there's a lot of ways water can get into a motor, primarily where the starter goes in to the back of this motor. There's a gasket in the back that probably leaks a little bit, that has some water get into the case. Now, if you see a mix on that, in a car, it's a lot worse than if we were in a ATV, because the ATV doesn't have a coolant system. Yes, you have an oil cooler, which is oil comes up and around, and there's a fan up there with a small radiator, but there's no coolant going through this motor. So that's what's also nice about the Hondas, and you can see by this fin structure right here. Hondas don't need it in this size motor. They do have it in the larger ones. They do have it in the Can-Ams. The more complicated of a machine you get, the more problems come with it. And in this one, you don't have to look forward to that water mixture with the oil or a bad head gasket, if you will. There's no seepages on this motor, and it's got good compression, and we know why this thing is probably not sparking or starting. So that much we know so far. The other thing is air. So a motor needs air. So if we go through here and pull apart the air filter, we look underneath here, and the first thing, if you see a mouse nest in here, you know something is going to be. Now, this one is very clean, actually, and this has oil on it right here, and that looks bad if you don't know mechanical stuff, but this oil on this filter is actually good. The reason why is because it catches more particles of dust or anything like that coming into here that would otherwise hurt the motor. So this filter is not crumbly, it's nice and pliable, it's got its oil on it. We are good. So we know that this motor is probably getting good and sufficient air, it's probably getting good and sufficient compression, it's probably not getting spark at this point in time, and fuel would be the other one, which again, very simply, just open up the gas tank, look in there, and then give it a sniff. Don't get too high off of it, but give it a sniff, and then if you smell reasonable gas, like something that smells relatively new, then you're in the clear. The other way to get gas, or just determine where the gas is, if we pull up this rubber piece right here, you have a carburetor here. If you can't start it after we do everything else, that's what would be the last scenario, is where you would clean the carburetor, which happens a lot, especially in ATVs that sit for a while. So, to determine if you're looking at a quad very quickly, if it's worth picking up, just check those 4 or 5 steps to really see if something is worth doing. Now, keep an eye in the next video. What we're going to do is we're going to go and repair this thing or diagnose it fully with our ohm meter. We're going to diagnose it with our compression tester. We're also going to diagnose it to see if we can get spark. And what we're going to do is repair this, and then the eventual goal is to get it out and test it in our Testing Classic ATVs channel here. So what we're going to do is we're going to move forward with this project, but first thing I wanted to go for is how to diagnose if a quad is worth buying or an ATV is worth buying that's old, not used, and cheap. So yeah, those are the important things when looking forward to a Honda like this. And like I said in the last video, being a Honda, give it one last test, and that's going underneath the machine here and checking out if there's any rust or rot on the frame. Now this one looks very clean. It's got some dirt on it, but it's a quad. So you go underneath here, this thing is solid. That's the best thing you can see. Now, if it's rotted underneath, stay away from it, because then it's going to require a lot of welding unless you know what to do. But this one is an amazing base. Another thing that this had was the original paperwork and title, and it had all of the stuff that came from the original, like the documentation, the BGB book, and all that stuff. So if you see something like this, this is the holy grail of finding a classic ATV for a little amount of money. So let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything with the Hondas, and let me know if you like this and want to see this thing working again. Take it easy, guys. We'll see you soon in the next video.